Hello, and welcome to the Six Figure Developer Podcast, the podcast where we talk about new and exciting technologies, professional development, clean code, career advancement, and more. I'm John Calloway.
I'm Clayton Hunt.
And I'm John Ash.
With us today is Harish Beeram. Harish is a senior enterprise UI UX mobile accessibility architect who is passionate about user interface and customer experience. Welcome, Harish.
Thank you, guys. How are you doing?
Doing great. Well.
Doing great. So, Harish, one of the things we ask everyone is sort of like, how did they get started in the industry? So, would you like to give a little bit of background to yourself and maybe kind of, what inspired you to dig in?
Yes. So, in my earlier days, like 13 years ago, I was doing some of the .NET development, core .NET development in those Visual Studio 2002 days, right? So during that time frame, I was solving some of the complex UI problems, and I had figured out, like, I have been solving the problems that the senior most developers were not able to solve. And that made me think that, oh, looks like UI is more of my passion, because more than .NET backend code, I was inclined towards the client side. And then hence started digging deeper and deeper into user interface technologies and user experience, and gained 13 plus years of experience in that. And here I am trying to still learn more. I still think it's the tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
So why don't you, before we dive too deeply in, why don't you help us and define user experience and user interface?
Yes. So in my opinion, user experience is all the interactions that a user has with a product. These interactions could be ideas, the emotions, and the memories. And the memories those moments create. So sometimes there could be good memories, sometimes there could be bad memories. So we all have good and bad products in our mind, and because of those memories that have been created in our mindset. And this is more of the user experience side of the front-end space. However, the user interface is just the tip of the iceberg. So this is what we see in the mobile interfaces and the web interfaces, websites typically. But user experience is beyond that, just beyond the user interface. And then we go into the user experience process, and the process of creating the intuitive interfaces that are more easy and user-friendly for the users. And user interface is a medium to create great experiences and great user journeys.
And so UX is what we're referring to when we talk, or user experience is what we're referring to when we talk about UX.
Yeah.
And UI
Yes.
is the user interface. Okay.
That is correct. Yeah. Absolutely.
And like a good full stack developer is what I refer to myself as. Like a good full stack developer that I am, I rely heavily on CSS libraries like Bootstrap and Material Design. It seems like a lot of people, or at least a lot of developers that don't have as much experience on the front end, or aren't as good with design, or have that artistic eye, might kind of lean on CSS frameworks and libraries like that. Do you have any opinions on that? Is that good, or is there?
I think it is definitely a great thing. I think for 90% plus of the cases, I can say that, and the 10% is exception. 90% cases, it is definitely going to work, because these frameworks have evolved, and some of the big companies like Twitter is behind Bootstrap, and all these frameworks has been developed by these companies who have a bandwidth of developers who have contributed. And it is definitely a great start, but there could be some exceptions where you might have to dig down deep and try to do some exception code inside of Bootstrap. So I have used Bootstrap myself, Material Design myself, and have really appreciated how much these frameworks have evolved. So 12 years ago, 10 years ago, you didn't have all these frameworks. So you were typically doing all CSS by hand and going with that. So that's definitely a great step. But just in case you want an exceptionally pixel perfect something else that the Bootstrap or Skeletal or Material Design doesn't offer, that's when you go into that areas.
Yeah, that's why I really like Material Design, because in their documentation, they not only have how and where and in what types of elements to use in your design, but they also have the why. Why is this button this shape in this position, this color, and that really helps to have it all make sense, right?
Yeah. So when Material Design was just up and running and just coming up, we took that Material Design and implemented at my work and showed them the benefits of how before the Material Design, there was a flat design concept, and people had some trouble with it. Flat design was good, but at the same time, there is human research. There is research about the eyes, how eyes would like to perceive the edges and shapes and some shadows. So schemorphic design was going too much into the depth of the gradients and the shadows and everything. But material design was the best balance of flat design versus a schematic one. So hence that has taken off so nicely that it is one of the de facto standards nowadays.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So with user experience, why is that important? I mean, people have been doing stuff on computers for a long time with what I'd say is some pretty terrible interfaces, and at least in business, a lot of the users seem to be perfectly okay with that. I mean, they never request it to be changed.
Yeah. So I will give you examples of why it is important at the same time. So user experience, until recently, it was great that we are able to do something from manual to automated and in computers. So that is great until recently. However, now the differentiator is the user experience. So for a company to make or break its sales, then the differentiation could be market differentiator. So Apple is a great example of user experience, right? You have Android, way available, way accessible, so many developers, but still Apple is keeping up because of the user experience aspects. And once they had their users emotionally attached, the users are not leaving their platform. And I am one of those big fans of Apple platform. I don't leave my iPhone. I don't even. I tried Android, but I stick back to iPhone. So
I was that way with Windows Phone, but it died.
yeah.
Some might say you killed it.
That's right.
Yeah, and also harping back on or mentioning back my limited design skills and artistic skills, much like the casual art critic. I don't know good art, but I know what I like. There are designs out there and websites out there and user interfaces of native applications that yeah, I like them well enough, but then there are the ones that I absolutely hate, and I know that is something I don't like. That's not really something I can put into words oftentimes, that I don't know why I hate this UI or this user experience or this application, but I just know that it rubs me the wrong way, and I refuse to use this application anymore.
Exactly. So it is called in one of the pitfalls is messy UI. So what happens is whenever these kind of applications are there, users can notice. So what you are reporting is an experience that you didn't like the UI because of certain types of friction that you have seen. And that is the goal of the user experience, is to reduce the friction. And the moment you reduce the friction, so an example is intuitive, right? So the turbo taxes, these guys reduce the friction to such a lowest extent that they make taxes, I don't know, a lot of fun, but at least a little bit more manageable. Have you guys used TurboTax? And the way the language is. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, our taxes are a little bit too complicated these days, but I've seen it advertised and certainly enjoy the frames that they choose to use in their marketing materials.
Yeah, I use TurboTax, and I find it for the last several years to be extremely easy to use. It's next, yes, no. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. So behind that, there is also a linguistics aspect where they use that tone or friendly tone. Don't worry, we will calculate this. Don't worry if you don't have, we'll get back to this. So that kind of reference model, that kind of user journey, that is much more appreciated. And a simple an accountant who is not an accountant can easily do taxes, right? Before you need an accountant, and now you can do it by yourself. Just paying that premium fees. That's all it is.
One thing I will say about taking that tone is Microsoft, maybe it's just I'm too skeptical with them, but there comes in the installation window and it says, relax, this will only take a moment. And I just hear like ominous music going, dun, 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 like, should I be looking around? What's going on?
Yeah, those are Microsoft minutes. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So are there other types of frictions? What kind of frictions can...
Yeah, so user experience, if we go a little bit deeper into the user experience, it is also the measure of the friction that the user has to achieve his goal. So if the friction is higher, what John was reporting earlier, it's going to be not a great user experience, but it could also be said as it's the measure of the load that the user has to take in order to achieve their goals. So both of them are bad because they introduce the needless CPU cycles for the brain. So the brain has to process a lot more information. And whenever there is a messy user interface and messy experience, user is confused and it's not as simple and as intuitive as it could be. So, and there are different types of friction. As I mentioned, it's the measure of friction between user and the user goals. So there could be cognitive friction, that's the number one. And cognitive friction is the information overload, the information architecture that you see on your interface. So let's take the word processors of before 95, Word 3 processor. It has too many icons, almost 15 rows of icons, and everything is an icon base, right? And after you scroll 70% of the screen, that's when you type. So it was overwhelming information architecture. So I think Microsoft has got much more better with each version of the Word. And there is a story about the Microsoft Office ribbon. I think they went into the menuing system and they went too deep into the menuing system. And people were asking for functionality that they already had. So 70% of the functionality that they had, people were asking, it would be great if Microsoft Word has this and this, or Excel had this and this. We already have that. So the design team at Microsoft did an amazing job with 2007 Office Suite. They went and came back with the Microsoft Ribbons architecture, and that user experience, it introduced a cognitive friction for a little bit, but once users saw it, how it works, how they could easily navigate without having to do an instruction manual, right? And they figured out 6, 7 main tabs, and they could find easily whatever context they are in at. So if you are selecting an image will have a format, and format can have a background or something like that. So that information architecture was very good, and I think it got appreciated over the time. So they still are holding on for last 10 years. So that's an example of how you can reduce the cognitive friction.
Yeah, I'm still not a fan of the ribbon though.
Well, that's because you used to have like all of the shortcuts, you'd customize your tool, right? And you'd all there.
That way it looks like more like my browser with the quick toolbars on there.
Yeah. So I think that's the medium. They could medium kind of an interface that could probably you are an expert user, and this is also one of the challenges of trying to please John Callaway in every sense. Microsoft shouldn't be doing that because he's hard to be pleased.
It's true.
So they should try to please 95 to 99% of the people. Let John Callaway be that 1%.
Yeah, luckily I'm pretty good at Google though. So if I know that it's capable, that the thing that I want to accomplish is possible, I can just Google and figure out how to do it and then get it done. So
I just assume that what I want can be done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a fairly safe assumption.
I just Google.
That's right. And if it cannot be done, then you have an innovative idea. You can create something that users can use because that doesn't exist, right?
Well, and part of the power of being a developer is if I really wanted to, I could learn how to make an Office plugin and then.
That is exactly right. So going to the next aspect is the second type of friction, which is physical friction. And when physical friction is introduced, users are trying to figure out what's happening in the screen. So let's say there was a long form and the save button or the next button was at the top of the form. So they are at the bottom and they are trying to figure out where do I go for saving? And then they figured out, they have to scroll up the chain and up the form and then go to the next. So that's physical friction. And physical friction could also be too many modal interfaces, and the information architecture is again complicated rather than thinking simpler way. And then the third type of friction is emotional friction. So we were just talking about the iPhone and how I've been a big fan of iPhone, right? The reason is the emotional attachment that I have, and we all have our favorite products. So your favorite product, Clayton, was Windows Phone, and unfortunately, they did not keep up with your expectation. So you had to give.
My only expectation was that they would keep supporting it.
Yeah. But still, you had that emotional attachment, and same with me with my iPhone. And I don't know what John Ash or John Callaway use, but
I just got my Pixel 3.
Oh, you did get a new one. Nice.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever's cheap.
I got a OnePlus 6T now. Cheap-ish and high quality.
I went with Google. They sold me in their marketing campaign for the first Google Pixel. Okay. I was waiting for a new Windows phone. I was waiting and holding my breath for a Surface phone.
Yeah.
And the date for the supposed announcement came and went and said, yeah, I just can't wait anymore. I'll go ahead and get the Google Pixel. 2 years later, ready for another phone. I was looking at the marketing materials for the upcoming Google Pixel 3. Mm-hmm. We were talking with Richard Campbell, I believe, who said that, you should wait until October. There might be an announcement about a new Windows phone. The announcement came and went, and there were just new Surface offerings for their laptop and tablet lines, and said, all right, well, guessing getting new Google Pixel 3.
So I think we can fix the emotional friction real easy, though. We just, for the background of every application, we just put kittens. Like problem solved, right?
Exactly. That would at least solve 90% of the problem. There could be some users who wouldn't like cats.
Yeah.
So dogs would work at it.
Puppies and
well, you have an option somewhere to switch it between kittens and puppies.
Or babies crying.
Oh, geez. That application would never sell.
So what's the role in UX in relation to friction, or with friction in relation to UX?
Yeah, this is an amazing concept of UX is inversely proportional to friction. So if you do an x-axis and y-axis, and you just draw a curve that is exponential, so you could see if the user experience is at the level of 4 out of 5, that is great user experience, then the friction is 1 out of 5. When the user experience is 5 out of 5, then you hardly have any friction. And it could be other way, where friction is very high, where people hated whatever they see, or they can't stand that application. They just use it because they have to use it at work, but they really completely use the word hate. That's where the friction is highest, right? Almost 4 or climbing towards 5, and the user experience is suffering. So it's inversely proportional. So whenever we design anything, any product, it doesn't necessarily mean a software application. It also applies to any physical product. So you're creating a product, if the user experience of the product is much more easy. For example, we recently bought an iRobo, right? And this product takes care of a lot of things. At the same time, it's easy to use, right? So you could easily come up with an interface, a product that is designed for complete user experience in mind. So you just have to be having OCD, and you have to be OCD like a user, like I need this, I need this, I need this. And then that's where you pursue your development team. It could be a product development team designing the product, or a software development team to get that level of perfection and that level of innovation.
What are some ways that you can, I don't know if it's the right term, but like connect with the intended user so that you can, I don't know, tune in and deliver something that's not going to have a lot of friction for that user?
Yeah, this is where the way you connect them is, I call it as introductory friction. So one of my colleagues showed me cash. I was trying to give him cash for the cookies, right? Girl Scout cookies or Boy Scout cookies. So he was saying, hey, do you know, I was trying to tell him that I have a check. I'll try to write him a check. And he said, hey, have you used a Cash App? I was like, I know I didn't use it. But again, I had that introductory friction, because anything related to cash, people have a little bit of friction because they are not sure if it is going to work out as they intended to, right? Because your bank account is involved. You're worried about security, financial services, and all the stuff. But he said, hey, just look at it. And as soon as he showed me the first 2-3 screens, and within 2-3 screens, it was done. And he showed me how to do the transaction. And I was sold right in that first 30 seconds. So this is where, as soon as the introductory friction is reduced, the users are hooked up. So now I have Cash App, and as soon as somebody wants me to pay cash, or I can get cash from somebody, then I could use the Cash App, right? So have you guys used that and feel the same way that Cash App is very intuitive enough?
I haven't actually heard of that one.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that.
No.
Okay, so try this out, Cash App, and this is, the first screen would be how many dollars you want to transfer, or even to cents, and then the other person is going to get a text, and then the bank will be linked, and it will be transferring within no time, and it's amazing. So this is where same thing happened with, I was really worried about an iPhone price, and my friend asked me to just look at it, and just wanted to give a small demo, and within 1 minute I was sold, right? And even though it's expensive, my wants became so much that I made it to sound it like a need, like I need it.
Yeah,
right?
You tried it once and now you're hooked.
Exactly. So,
Gotta watch out. Apple's a gateway drug.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's where Apple has started 11 years ago for me with the iPhone, and I still keep on using it because they are able to maintain my interest and enthusiasm, and they are meeting all my needs and wants. So
Yeah.
at this point, I don't have a desire to look into Pixel, right? Because Apple is innovating enough for me to be able to stick with the product.
So how can people that aren't so great at design, or don't have full understanding of user experience and how to appeal to users. How can we get more involved, or what are the challenges with designing the next great application or an Apple-esque
Yeah.
type of interface?
Yes, great question. I think the challenges are keeping in mind three aspects. We talked about the friction and different types of friction. The second one is keeping in mind about myths and pitfalls. We can talk a little bit details into what myths and pitfalls examples could be. And then the third one is the design principles. And once we have these design principles, and I'm not talking about the coding design principles like MB, not the design patterns, MBVM, MBC, client side or server side, not that one. I'm talking about the user experience design patterns, which are like Gestall's continuity and proximity principles, Hicks law, Fitts law, and it's user experience has been a matured field now, and there's a vast amount of information on the internet that could be easily found and explored. And the goal in mind should always be, is it helping my users? Is it not helping? Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second.
Now you owe everybody beer.
Yeah, so sorry about that. My
That's
friend
fine.
doesn't know that he shouldn't be calling me at this point. Yeah. So give me 1 second to switch off my phone. We need to edit this. Yeah, it helps if I press the right button to switch it off. Yes. Yeah. So.
So you were mentioning Hicks law, Pareto rule, and
Yes.
Fitts law. Can you go into detail or just a quick overview of what those are?
Yeah. So Hicks law is like if there is a lot of number of options, the time to locate an option is going to increase. So for example, if we have a drop-down field, if there are 400 fields, 400 items in the drop-down, and the drop-down doesn't have type ahead or something, then it would be difficult for a user to scroll through if it's not alphabetical order, then it you still have to search for the item that you are searching, and that is going to take time. So it could take 40 seconds to 1 minute if there's a huge amount of left. But most of the drop downs are at least alphabetical order, or at least it will have search embedded into it, like type ahead search, those kind of things. So that's an example of Hicks law. And then the Fitts law is like if you have an object which is for a bigger size. So this is one of the reasons why the download buttons are big green. So the distance to it is also shorter, and people travel to it faster because the object size is bigger and the target is bigger. You can easily target something. You don't need a pinpoint accuracy to target a big download button, right? You can just approximately go and it will be fraction of a second. And we are talking here seconds and fraction of seconds. Those also matter because the faster the users are able to cater to their needs, or like we are able to cater to their needs and they are able to achieve their goals, that's how faster they're going to appreciate, because everybody wants not to spend too much time on the interfaces, right?
Yeah, and those bigger buttons are probably also reducing cognitive friction because they're easy to understand. I can quickly see this is of importance, and it drags your attention. You make those decisions faster, and that really kind of makes the emotional experience much better.
Exactly. And the Pareto principles is also like focusing on the 20% that is the core, and then the 80% is going to be the lesser and lesser of importance. So if you take any application, you can easily categorize that this is the top 20% of my product. And then the challenge that comes into a lot of enterprise applications and even small and medium businesses trying to do this is to cater to the specialist needs of an super expert user and trying to make John Callaway happy. They should. It's going to be such a specific use case that if they spend too much amount of time, their value of return on investment on any product is going to diminish as they try to cater to super special use cases, unless John Callaway pays a premium on whatever exactly he wants, or Clayton wants something special that Microsoft doesn't have, then they'll create it for them.
Great. Now everybody's going to charge me more for everything.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned some myths around UX. Could you talk about some of those?
Yes. There are a lot of myths and pitfalls. I think there is a course on Pluralsight by Billy Hollis, and he goes into a lot of details, but I think I can go on to a couple of them. One of them is white space. So as soon as we see white space, and one of the myths that some of the product owners or the business units think that, oh, there is a lot of space. We can have this information here. We can have this information here, and that makes the information overload, right? And as soon as the white space has been occupied, it starts to introduce cognitive friction, because every box, every rectangle is going to have to be processed by your brain, and this is going to introduce more and more friction. So.
I think that's why I hate Excel.
Yes. Right.
I see Excel and my brain stops working.
Exactly. And each of that box, your eyes are transmitting a retina. So there are 3 stages of processing. Eyes transmit the central vision, transmit that information to the retina, and the retina transmits it to the brain, and the brain has 2 stages then, pre-attentive processing and attentive processing. In the pre-attentive processing, that's where all these boxes have to be calculated by the brain and said, okay, where is my edge? And okay, this edge is here and this edge is here. Okay, once it gets all the edges and then it gets the shapes, then it categorizes into groups and colors and other schemes. So this is what I mean about the brain CPU cycles, where the brain has to process too much information, and that's going to be hard on user. So the less is better. So white space is much better, and that's why designers like to introduce a nice amount of white space. And also there is human brain evolution, and we have been, it goes to a principle called biophilia, and this biophilia is openness and or savanna principle, the greenery and the openness. So let's say in savanna, the green fields, you can easily see your predators, and you could say, oh, I can see my danger and I can run. And human eyes have evolved from that kind of an evolution. So it easily recognizes white space, goes to that kind of an evolution and gives you the sense of it's nice, calm, and there's no danger here. So that's the feeling that the white space brings, and that's why white space is important while creating. So that's one of the myths when people say there's too much white space, we need to fill up the white space. The other myth could be an easy one, is scrolling. Scrolling is not evil. People say scrolling is evil, that's too much scrolling. As we talked earlier, cognitive friction, as long as the friction is low, then people don't mind scrolling. So you see every day, and we do it every day. We are doing it on our mobile phones. We are scrolling and scrolling through the information on the websites, on Amazon, scrolling through all these products and buying all that product. And we are not worried about scrolling. Same thing, as long as the friction is reduced.
As long as it's not side scrolling. Because that is evil.
That is absolutely right. Great point, Clayton. I think scrolling on horizontal is one of the worst experiences that you can give to the user, because they would not intuitively understand that you need to scroll to the right to see more columns on that grid.
Yeah, my mouse doesn't have a wheel for that.
Exactly.
You should get a better mouse.
There's nothing wrong with my mouse.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, in terms of another one last example of myth could be, let's do like Amazon, let's do like Google, let's do like Microsoft, or let's do like Apple. These guys have invested billions of dollars, so we can just copy them or inspired by them, right? So that could not be the case, right? So let's say you are creating an enterprise application and you cannot have just a search box at the middle of your screen and say, hey, here's the application. Whatever you want to do, just search and then we'll give you the information. Enterprise applications should be informative and kind of a portal that could be easily accessible with other information. So if you take an intranet portal that you're developing, you can't just say, I would like to be like Google and try to have that. So that doesn't work. Same thing with Amazon, right? Amazon has this nice mega menu and a button directly, one button click to proceed, right? My wife uses it a lot. I know how much they have spent on the user experience to make that less number of clicks, less friction, less everything less, so they could easily get the product to be sold. So they are achieving that. However, that scenario might not work for your application, where a mega menu might not be a good concept in where you don't have that many links on. So,
but that's a good point though. Is there are a lot of companies out there with similar business models, or a lot of smaller companies that say, I want to be like these larger companies. Maybe we sell something, so we want a website that's like Macy's, or maybe we are a larger portal e-commerce site. We want to be like Amazon. So why would a smaller company want to invest in UX?
and that's a great question, because what happens if you don't invest in UX is you already have these big players. It is a matter of time before your existing user base is going to shift to the better experience at a lower cost and greater performance. So your market differentiator should be something that's of value to your users. And if you have that market differentiator, then you are going to have to innovate in that space where you need to make the competition irrelevant. And this is called the blue ocean strategy, right? Where you have a better offering or a product or service that Amazon doesn't have. And now you have a user base that's going to be with you because they like whatever you're offering right now and that product and services. However, they have those ideas, and those ideas are not complaints. And you need to take those ideas and the feedback to improve the product. So everybody, even Amazon does that, right? Microsoft does that. They want to take your feedback, developers' feedback, to be able to create a better developer experience, a better Office product and everything. And that's very critical for any business.
Excellent. Excellent. So one of the things we ask all of our guests is to kind of elaborate and share some wisdom about to those of us who might be just kind of getting started. And I think in this case, even some of our senior developers, they probably all could be kind of digging into UX and trying to understand, they're starting out. So could you kind of give some pointers, some tips to people that are just getting started?
Yes. So when you're getting started with user experience, one of the foremost important thing is to have user-centered design or user in mind all the time, because it doesn't matter you have a great application, it is awesomely fast, it is awesomely secure, but the user experience suffers, people are not going to use it. And vice versa for security. Like if somebody compromises on security, even though they have good user experience, they are not going to use it, right? So I think these are the basic three things: security, performance, and user experience. So these are the three pillars, or at least the tripod, where you can have your ball on the tripod. However, if we go to the next level, understanding why the users care about some things that you think that are like this, I don't want my product to change for this, but you have seen 3 requests of your users asking for the same exact thing. So then there is an introspection on the product that needs to happen. There might be a value proposition that you are introducing that feature, and that feature might be liked by 10 other clients. And this is always happens. Lots of products have evolved based on the feedback, and everybody does that in SurveyMonkey or whatever channels they use to get the feedback. That's an amazing intuitiveness, because what sometimes people say the things they think, sometimes people polish and they don't say the things. So cognitive UX is about figuring out the instant reaction. This is the right away. As soon as I see something, wow, it is great. I love this. Like, for example, I mentioned Cash App, right? Wow, I like it. And they got my cognitive UX. However, if I didn't like it, right, and my friend asks me, "What did you like Cash App?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I think I do like it, but maybe I will not be using it," right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is research on that also. People sometimes will not 100% share their cognitive UX, and there are devices that can measure that. There are devices that go on your head and brain, and they will measure your neural activity. And that as soon as that happens, what the neural activity is going to tell them is like, does this person like the product or not? And then those are some of the user testing is one of the basic principles. So there is a website called usertesting.com where you can sign up your users and give them some tasks to perform and see how they are doing, and then ask them for an honest feedback, and then and then there are other websites like UX Matters, UX Planet, and there's a vast amount of information on the internet.
Yeah, what so you said UX Matters, any other, you also mentioned a Pluralsight.
Yes.
What other resources might you kind of call out here?
Yes, so I think the developers mostly have access to Pluralsight, and some of the things that I've mentioned are referred from Billy Hollis. He had a great user experience course on Pluralsight. And then there was another course by, I don't remember the author, but it's called UXDD, User Experience Driven Design. And that's also a great course where you start thinking, rather than code first, data first, we are starting to think, what is my user experience going to be, and how can the information, which is data, can be catered to that.
Awesome. So if some of our followers might want to check you out and follow you, is there a way that they can kind of do that?
Sure. At Twitter handle is at Harish Beeram, and you can easily find me at LinkedIn. And there will be some blog posts on the company I work for, Agile Thought. I'll be posting some blogs in the next couple of months. So feel free to reach out through LinkedIn or Twitter if there are any questions. I'd be happy to answer them.
Excellent. Do you have any upcoming speaking engagements by any chance? Or
yes, I think in April, one of the Code Stack in 2019. There is that's in Tennessee, so I'm probably speaking over there. And recently finished one at Tampa Annual Code Camp. Then there is constantly speak up at meetups and user groups. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, Harish, thanks so much for coming on the show.
So thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and I had great fun. Hope you guys had great fun too.
That was Harish Beeram. Harish is a senior enterprise UI, UX, mobile accessibility architect, passionate about the user interface and customer experience.
If you like this episode, please like, rate, and review on iTunes.
Find show notes, blog posts, and more at sixfiguredev.com.
And be sure to follow us on Twitter at sixfiguredev.
This has been another episode of the Six Figure Developer Podcast, helping others reach their potential. I am John Calloway.
I'm Clayton Hunt.
And I'm John Ash.